Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Joined by a special guest this time. We got Oren joining us. We're going to go over a little bit of Oren's background, kind of origin stories for how he got involved with the company, but also have a couple questions I've been collecting on the side. But first things first, Oren, how are you?
I'm doing well. Exciting times. We just announced the first patient. We're probably going to talk about it. So it's a huge milestone for us, for EnliveX, for me, and for the team. So I'm very excited. Very excited.
Love it. Well, don't give anything away just yet. We'll get there. A little teaser for people that make it to the second
Sure.
half of the video. But figured the first time you're joining me, maybe we kick it off with some of your background. Don't really mind. Pick wherever you wanted to start, but maybe a kind of early career, some things you were doing before EnliveX, and then of course how EnliveX kind of came in.
I got into in the industry fairly early, about 15 years ago. I finished my PhD. I'm immunologist by training, so I did a lot of work on the immune system and NK cells and so on. And I joined a company back then called Modigen Tech, or Prolor, which was founded by Shai Novik, which is currently the chairman of EnliveX. So you start seeing the connections there. And I've worked my way up. It was a company that was around extending the circulating time of proteins and peptides. And we've developed several long-acting drugs, with the leading one was growth hormone. So, back then we were able to show that we can do a once-weekly administration of that drug instead of the daily approved version. I was involved in various aspects, including managerial roles and so on. But in 2013, the company was acquired by a pharmaceutical company called Opco Health, led by Phil Frost. And then there were people left, people stayed, and I became the CEO or the general manager of Opco Biologics in Israel, and continue to move this program forward with additional programs at earlier stages. And in 2014, we did a co-development and commercial agreement with Pfizer. And I was part of the steering committee that worked closely with Pfizer for several years in order to push this program into late clinical stage. Eventually, I'm very, very proud to say that was submitted and approved in various jurisdictions, including in Japan and Europe. And today we have very happy kids that can inject once weekly instead of daily. So at 2019, when we finished the BLA, I was looking for the next, opportunity. And without disrespecting what I did before, I was looking for something new, something that is a game changer. It could change literally the life of people. And it's addressing unmet medical conditions and life-threatening situations and so on. And this is exactly when kind of Shai approached me and say, hey, I have this role. I am looking for a CEO. We have a long history together. You might think about this. I looked at the science. I've met with the founder, and he kind of threw me back to immunology and the solid science. And, it was a challenge that I want to say, I want to join this, and I can take this potential that it's embedded in this technology and platform and help to materialize that into actual drug. So that got me totally excited, and that's when I joined it towards the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, so about 2.5 years now. And yeah, that's it.
Wow, no, awesome. So he kind of incredible, working with Shy, and then, hey, this is great. You got a drug, like you said, kind of administering in multiple different countries, regions. So congratulations to that. And then Shy comes along and says, hey, maybe we want to get back together. Here you go, looking at the science and loving what you saw, which is fantastic. And here you are a couple of years later. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. What an awesome background. Anything else you wanted to kind of squeeze in about you and your background before you did some kind of like rapid fire Q&A? I know we're about to talk about, today's announcement, but anything you wanted to squeeze in just before?
Well, I did a lot of, I think I covered many grounds in terms of different indications because it was a platform technology. So we developed for growth hormone disorders, we developed for diabetes, obesity, hemophilia. And so I've developed that, I guess, throughout the years, the ability to get into new indications and to learn quite quickly what needs to be done to move the project into clinical stages. So that was a very important piece. And I actually covered, from CMC, from clinical, preclinical. I was VP R&D. I was heading the CMC and early stage development. So I did a lot of work that I think kind of helped me to be able today to take this platform and open it and take it into different indications, which is rare. Exactly where we are today at EnliveX. I mean, we've now moved very aggressively into sepsis with this phase 2 study that we're probably going to talk about, but we did a lot of work in the past 2 or 3 years to allow us to go into solid tumors. And it's a learning process, and as much as you're trained in it, it allows you to get things quicker and faster. And I think that's very, very important. The fact that I'm an immunologist gets me totally excited about what I see here. It's NK cells and so on, and T cells, and it's macrophages. We want to talk about that for sure. But for me, it's like going back to basic. Of course, we have great team. I'm not doing the science. We have Professor Mavoch with us and other great people, but it allows me to, I think, to add another layer as a CEO. Because I have an understanding on the science, and it's not that typical. It's just because I just saw things here and there, but it's part of my training. So it's what got me hooked up into biology at the beginning, right? So
Yeah, no, it's an
that's
amazing.
it. Beside of that, I'm a proud father, and that's it. I think that's very important too.
Yeah, no, love it. Well, look, you have that added layer, like you said, which is fantastic. And you've already been alluding to a few of the questions, so I say, let the fun begin. Let's dive in. Might as well, while it's super fresh, as I'm reading it 2 hours ago, you guys announced, the first dosing of a patient. Do you want to kind of walk through a little bit of kind of what that was, and again, congratulations, and maybe walk people through that release a little bit?
Yeah, so maybe I'll take a step back for a second and just
Sure.
say, how exactly we got ourselves into oncology, and again, back to science. So when you're looking at the advances made in oncology in the past few years, especially after the huge excitement about both engineered CAR T cells and cell therapy, and then immunotherapy, anti-PD-1, anti-CTLA-4, immunocheckpoint inhibitors. And I think in the past, 7, 8 years, so many programs that try to combine different immunocheckpoint inhibitors and try to overcome the limitation that CAR T cells has in solid tumors. Not enough progress. We don't see, there's, occasional good results here or there, but generally speaking, I don't think we are where we were supposed to, or where we thought we will be about 7, 8 years ago. I just came back from ASCO, and I saw this endless amounts of lectures and posters, and at the end of the day, you can squeeze it into maybe 2-3 studies that has some marginal effect that is really substantial. Extending the half-life, the life of patients in a few months is important, but I think we're trying to reach a higher bar. Really changing the course of those diseases, especially in cancer. So this is a clearly unmet medical need, and we need some innovation. We need innovation. We need to come with something different. If we're doing the same things again and again, and it doesn't work that well, it means we need to change our mindset. And I think another process, or another thing that happened in the past few years is the understanding that T cells are important, but they're not going to resolve the whole thing. We definitely need to get ourselves involved in other immune cells. They're there. I mean, natural killer cells, just by their name, I think we understand what they're doing, right? So, gradually you start seeing more modalities, companies targeting additional cells, additional immune cells, like Fate and other companies. And still, there was this subset of cells of the immune system that are not being given enough attention up until like 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, something like, and those are the macrophages. And I think we understand today that in oncology and tumor-associated macrophages that within the environment of the tumor, they play a pivotal role, in some cases, very pivotal role in promoting, listen to what I say, promoting tumor growth. So this is an immune cell that's supposed to fight the tumor, but is actually kind of hijacked or manipulated by the tumor in order to act as a servant. I would even say that. So there are new companies in the last few years that are trying to target macrophages in various methodologies. But again, you don't want to target a very specific pathway. You want to change the theme. You want to change the microenvironment of the tumor in order to get a really substantial responses. So all of these concepts of unmet medical need that it's not addressable enough, although everybody's trying, a lot of efforts is and on the other hand, the role of macrophages, we said, well, we know how to reprogram macrophages. Let's see what happens if we do that. And we started generating this preclinical data in various models, testing either the drug, our drug, alocetra, as a monotherapy or in combination with different anti-cancer agents. And I'm talking about, anti-PD-1, anti-CTLA-4, but others, CAR T cells, different models. And we start seeing this remarkable effect. And we start seeing that not only we get an extended survival, but actually depend on the model and depend on the cancer agent that we combined the alocetra with, we start seeing complete responses. Mice that were totally cured in about 40% in some models and some experiments to 100%. And that was persistent effect. So we've monitored those animals for, in some experiment, 80 days, some of them 150 days. I mean, mice are getting very old at 150. They're just dying because they're old. So that was a persistent effect. And it repeated itself if we did it in-house or if we did it in collaboration, for instance, with Yale Cancer Center. So some of the data they generated, we've published that data in ASCO. And we're still collaborating on with the group there, again, amazing science. So, and that led to the understanding that we need to, it's very nice that we cure animals. It's very, very, very clear effect, but it's about time to try to see how we translate that into clinical stages. So we worked, I think, one of the things we did in the last 2.5 years is really establish the company, the teams, the groups. We recruited very, very important people that help us in the management team from board level to daily management team. And we were able to put this target of having the first oncology patient somewhere in the middle of this year. And this is exactly what happened. So it's a lot of work. And I, from here, I want to say huge appreciation to the team from the idea, from the vision until execution, all the way from Professor Mevorach and the teams in Israel in Tel HaShomer, Professor Avraham Nissan and Dr. Muhammad Adila, and our team at EnliveX, which is an amazing team and has really worked really hard to get to this stage. And it's just the beginning. This is the first step of a really robust clinical oncology program that we're planning to put in the next 2-3 years. And another study, that's something we already reported, is coming towards this by the end of this year, and hopefully earlier, we can start an additional study in advanced solid tumors.
Incredible hearing you talk about like the high level vision kind of mission stuff, and how that framed you, choosing even board members, employees, and others. Yeah, look, you guys have been delivering. That's what people definitely are responding with. Congratulations. Really looking forward to, obviously, cross our fingers, success of these clinical trials. And incredible hearing you talk about it and the science and kind of the background, your view on macrophages, but more in general on how to fix something. So really appreciate that. It probably means you're gonna have to hop back for another video because we're gonna get a ton of good questions. So looking
I'm
forward
happy
to
to do
that.
so.
But well, awesome. Look, I think that was a great kind of answer and a little overview of kind of the press release you guys had today. And again, congratulations. I've got some general questions. I figured, hey, why not a good time to kind of hear your view on, size of markets, commercials, competitors, and just other things happening. And we can do maybe a little bit more of the specific questions on another video, do a full kind of Q&A. But I'll kind of throw it at you. Just picking a place to start. We get a ton of questions about kind of size of markets, and I know we chatted briefly. I mean, oncology is huge, but I'll throw it to you, and you kind of tackle it how you want, and then we'll go through.
Sure. So I would actually start with sepsis. We've been running this phase 2 study, and we're expecting interim data, Q1, more or less towards the end of Q1, maybe the next year, and top line data Q3. And if we'll be able to replicate some of the early data that we generated in the 10 septic patients that we treated so far. So I think we'll be, again, positioning ourselves in a completely unmet medical condition that companies been failing over again in the past 20, 30 years or so, right? And they fail because it's a complicated indication. I'm not saying it's easy, as you can see, I have this black marks here, and probably that's part of the story. But I think the main reason was, again, that we didn't understand, and we definitely understand this today, that sepsis, it's not really a disease, it's a condition, and it's heterogeneous. It depends on the source of the infection. It depends on the status, where you are, what's your background, are you old, are you early, many factors plays. And from an immunological point of view, it's a very complex condition, very, very complex. And just targeting a specific molecule won't work. It simply doesn't work. 15 or 16 studies in neutralizing TNF alpha failed. And they failed because they didn't understand the complexity, I guess, or they understood it, but they were optimistic or whatever. So sepsis to date doesn't have, we know how to treat them at the beginning. We know how to give antibiotics, some fluid, some vasopressors, and so on. But if the patient continue to deteriorate, which happens in many cases, we don't have good remedies. We don't have good solutions today. So from that perspective, there is really no competition. It's a huge market, and we're talking about $30 billion market. There are some companies that are at phase 2, okay, in pharma or such, that are more focused on specific niche of sepsis, like AKI patient with sepsis. Again, it's a more focused, right, target. And in that sense, it might work, but I guess, will have its limitation. So the market potential here is huge. It's definitely huge, no doubt about it. When we were talking about, again, about $33 billion market or so. In terms of oncology, so yeah, I think you answered that question, right? So it's an endless market. We have a platform, and maybe we'll just say, we're thinking about various indications, and we're going to test it in various indications, various specific oncology diseases, whether if we give it locally into specific cavities of the patient, or systemically in cases of lungs or or hepato a carcinoma and such. So it will be not responsible from my end to give a number at this stage. I think the opportunities are huge, but we really want to first see that we can actually do this change that I was talking about. And I think later on, the market cap or whatever will follow. Let's put it this way.
Well, that's good. That's what people want to hear for sure. And it's funny you say that. Of course, a lot of the questions we get are, people trying to make those links between, hey, this company's going after something similar. Their market cap is this. You're doing this, and your market cap is this. So you always get those types of kind of comparable questions, even though some of the times, it doesn't always relate. And, appreciate you talking about some of the drugs that are a little bit more niche focused, but are playing in, that was 33 billion with a B. So quite a big market, which is fantastic to hear. Some of the other kind of general questions, just kind of run through, and you've been covering a lot of them in the same answer, are, deeper dive into some of the commercials, kind of talking about the size of those industries, competitors, what other drugs exist, and what are those company sizes. Is there anything you would kind of add to your answer after hearing kind of the rest of those general questions?
Well, I would say that I think we're not another Me Too drug. EnliveX has a different concept, a different modality of a different focus and a different novel mechanism of action. And in that sense, I think it's kind of, we're trying to break the ceiling glass, so to speak. And that eventually, if we're hopeful it will be able to translate that into additional robust clinical data, I think we'll probably are coming in with a different concept that might prove itself to be effective in places where other companies fail, either in sepsis or in oncology, in solid tumors. So it's very difficult to say, this company is doing that, has 2 programs and so on. I know that people do that, and I do that myself, right? Because I'm trying to kind of get position where we are, but definitely most companies are undervalued, that's for sure. We understand the market situation and so on, and we live in that market. And we actually are, from a financial point of view, maybe that's something we didn't talk about at all, but from a financial point of view, EnliveX is, we have a runway for 2 years as we publish, right? Q3 2024, and with no debt. And that being said, and although it makes us in a much better situation than many companies in the market today, we're still doing some activities to make sure that we kind of flatten a little bit our expansion and our utilization curve to make sure that we can even take this further. And that's something we're doing in a responsible way. I think it would be irresponsible to just ignore and say, well, we're in good condition, that's great. That's not enough. Nobody knows when exactly the market will start to stabilize. It will happen sooner or later, but we're planning ourselves in a way that is responsible, still executing the milestones that I was talking about, in terms of sepsis and oncology on the one hand, but on the other hand, make sure that we're very focused on what we're doing.
Yeah, we've tackled that question with Shay before, but awesome to hear you guys say. And yeah, luckily you guys are in a great position, having raised a ton of money and have that runway for another 2 years, which is great. Here I figured this is kind of be a good way to end maybe the kind of Q&A, at least for today. Got a bunch of questions, of course, about Allocetra. We've gone through little conversations in the past on video, but figured to get your view on that. The general question is, what are next steps / timeline? But curious, where you want to take that question, and we'll go from there.
Well, first other thing, we've published recently that we've moved into the frozen formulation. That it's not that straightforward in cell therapy, especially. I've did this many times in my past, moving through different formulation, but so that gave a lot of experience into this process together with the team that we've recruited in the past 2 years. But that will allow us to go into new countries, new sites, to expand our capabilities, and eventually, commercializing this drug, and endless advantages that are very, very clear. So from that perspective, I think it allows us to have a more robust plan to meet our expectations and our recruitment timelines and the clinical timelines. So from a timelines perspective, we've, as I mentioned, in sepsis, Q1, interim data, and Q3 having top line data towards the end, the second part of 2023. From oncology, we have the first patient recruited, as we said at the beginning. We're expecting to have, this data will generate as we move along. So it's we'll probably generate sufficient data to go and discuss it during 2023. I'll be a little bit cautious here in saying exactly when, but we are planning to have data already during 2023 with the oncology piece. And I guess those are the most important milestones. I mean, there are many to get there, but the ones that are important for the public are these ones.
Yeah. No, well, look, I really appreciate you joining. You did such a good job. You have to join again. So, whether that's good or bad, you can tell me. But that being said, of
No,
course,
I'll be
we're always
happy. I'll be happy to join again.
amazing. Well, then, for anyone that's made it this far, if you've got questions, you want to drop them below. We'll definitely do a Q&A with Oren and get him on some of these videos. Maybe even get Shay on as well. But Oren, thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much,
Have a good
Yusuf, for having me.
rest of your week, and we'll chat again soon.
Definitely. Thank you very much.